break raising capital into four major categories. There's traditional funding, non-traditional funding, crowdfunding, and finally there's grants. And so you, as an entrepreneur, have an idea of how you ran your numbers and what your forecast is going to be. I'm going to be using a fictitious number, say $50,000. You determine that you need to raise $50,000. Where is it going to come from? So we're going to look at these, and we're going to look at the pros and cons for each of these to see which makes sense for you. Now, some of you, this course is designed to help entrepreneurs launch their companies, but also look at external financial possibilities. So if you decide by running these numbers, hey, I can finance this myself, that's ideal. That's the best when you don't need outside capital because it makes it a lot easier for you. This course is designed if you need external capital, and therefore you're going to present and pitch as if you need to raise this money. So I still want you to go through this course, whether you think you can fund this on your own or not, because your presentation is going to be addressing this. Traditional funding, let's take a look at what this means. The first traditional funding is how you normally raise money, at least here in the United States, and there are 5 different categories under this. We also explain how each one is appropriate and what stage or stages of your company it is good for. So the first stage is a friends and family round. There's also a third called fools. Those are the guys that are like, hey Joe, I love you. Here's my money. Let me know how I can help you out. Whether or not you can earn a return on that money and what interests them or not, they tend to be people that you already know. They don't have to do diligence on you. We'll explain that more in a moment, but first of all, are there people that you already have a relationship with? Some of you do not have friends and family that you can reach out to, and you might not know very many fools. So a next possible source of money for you to raise from are angels. I'm not making it up. It could be months or years later. You now have some track record. You tend to have built your company. Investors tend to be the next level of angels or investors or even individual investors. I lumped all of these people into what I call an anchor investor. An anchor investor is kind of like if you go to a mall, you have anchor stores in those malls. Like major stores that show up at these malls or have a store at these malls. What attracts others is this anchor store. So it's the same with investors. If you get a big name investor or somebody who's done this many times before, that helps you attract other investors to your company. So there are different types of investors, but they tend to invest a little bit here, at least here in the United States, maybe $25,000 as much as they individually could. Or it could be much more, say $1 million. Again, it depends on the investor. And now that I've been in business for a few years, I have raised money from friends and families and fools. I've raised money from investors, angel investors, and now I'm ready for some serious money I need to really grow my company. I need to add a major component. One of the key differences between angel investors and venture capitalists is investors using their own money. Venture capitalists, on the other hand, use somebody else's money. They get other people's money involved, and then they integrate it into their investment. So they tend to be much more aggressive because it's not their money that they're investing. So to do that, venture capitalists, VCs, need to really grill you and be aggressive with you during their due diligence. For this reason, VCs also have a nickname, vulture capitalist. Just be super careful in negotiating with them because they can be very aggressive with you. If you're not careful, and you might have signed some documents that you might later regret signing. And then there are super angels and also consortium of angels. These tend to be smaller than venture capitalists, but not always. They are usually willing to invest into smaller, earlier stage companies. They can put in as little as $250,000 or $3 or $5 million or even more. VCs, especially at the early stage, tend to have a sweet spot of around $2 million that they invest per deal. Super angels and VCs can say, hey, you know what? We're not getting enough deal flow at the $2 to $3 million investment range. We're going to come down and lower our investment size to $750,000, and we're going to be acting like an angel. Essentially, super angels and consortium of angels will be flexible in their investment size based upon the investment opportunity that you present to them. And finally, there are traditional loans. In this last traditional category, these tend to be banks, and some of them give small business loans. It's very tough for startups to find a bank that will lend them money unless you have assets to back up that loan. So what that means is, hey, I can lend you $50,000 if you have $50,000 in savings, if we can put a lien if you do not make your payments. Banks are very traditional. Nothing wrong with that. The pros of a bank, if you can get a loan, is that you don't have to sell any equity in the company. You just need to pay it back. Plus interest, of course. The amount of interest that you will be charged will be dependent on the level of risk and the type of bank which you select. The good thing about an investment, when they give you the money, you don't have to worry about paying them back right away. The challenge can be that some investors want to see a very high return on the money that they have invested in you. So if you give them $50,000, they may want to be returned in 5 to 7 years 10 times or 20 times that amount. So usually in the beginning, it's friends, family, and fools, because they do not ask for this kind of aggressive return for the money that they have invested in you. Investors who do this for a living usually look for a 10x minimum, up to 30 times return on their money. So that means if they invest $50,000 in you, then in 5 to 7 years, they would want to see the shares in your company being worth $500,000 to $1.5 million, depending on the multiple they need to return to their investors. But investors or VCs can be very helpful as well. They can introduce you to others, and they can help you grow your business dramatically. Let's look at non-traditional funding sources. This can be fun, and it's only limited by your level of creativity on what goes on into this. So stakeholders can be vendors and customers. It can be employees, that can be friends and family. This has worked well for me in my previous companies, just focusing on that. A friend of mine had a retail store. They had suppliers, and they gave a seminar, and then they invested money. They said, don't pay us for 6 months. That was rebranded as a loan. It gave us 6 months to come up with the money to pay them back. So instead of coming up with $100,000 to buy inventory for their stores, they gave me the money for the inventory up front and then sell it, all before having to pay them back, plus a small level of interest. That worked for them with suppliers, vendors, and a couple of employees. Instead of paying them right away, they can make extra money on the back end from this transaction. Or you can pay them a little bit less if you give them some equity in your company. Sometimes you have amazing customers that love you and love what you're doing, and they have a lot of money. Or maybe they're just a corporation. This worked well for another friend of mine. It worked very well for his business. We were their best customer, they were our contractor, and they invested $50,000. Next are accelerators and incubators. They're different, but usually used synonymously. You build your business at the accelerator, and in return, they'll help you multiply your business in many ways and accelerate the growth of your business. There are a lot of them out there now, so if you're looking at accelerators or incubators, evaluate them carefully. What are they going to offer you? How much time are they going to work with you? How much equity, if any, do you need to give up to work with them? Do they give you the cash up front? And what is their past success rate? The sustainability sector, or the green sector, at least here in New York City, we have a lot of options where they help you focus on your environmental, social company and help you scale it and grow it and put together the pieces. There are many sources for this. You'll just need to look them up to see if they may be a fit for you. If you are based in New York and have an alternative energy related business, the New York State Energy and Research Development, NYSERDA, might be worth looking into. Imagine, around the world, how many more options there are because this area is growing so rapidly. You're going to need to take a look at your area and what's being offered in slow money, which is the last category of non-traditional funding. Slow money is also a growing sector right now. Slow money is, hey, I understand we're not going to get a 30x return on our company, or maybe not even a 10x return on our company. I'm going to give you some money, and I understand you are a farm, or it's going to take you some time to grow your business. So for example, I could be just looking for a 3%, 5%, or 6% a year return on my money. Crowdfunding is a very hot area these days. These are some of the major areas, but there are many other options under each of these categories. The two most popular these days are Kickstarter and Indiegogo. There are key differences and key similarities between each of them. On Kickstarter, you set the minimum amount of money you want to raise. Unless you raise it, you don't get any of the money. Indiegogo is different. You keep the money regardless of how much money you ultimately raise. Whether you use either platform, you still need to market it and find the donors or investors for yourself. Either one keeps a small percentage of what you raise. Most entrepreneurs don't realize this, but when you sign up for a campaign, you still have to promote it and also produce the product or service people are donating to. Each site focuses on different types of businesses, so you'll need to screen for that. If you want to go this route of crowdfunding, it can be helpful to gain traction from your target audience. On this slide, Mission Markets is a secondary market exchange that focuses on sustainable businesses. The last category is essentially grants. Grants are the coolest, but the hardest also. The coolest because it's basically money that an institution gives you and it says, hey, you don't have to pay us back for that. We have them here in New York State, but they're also all over the world. Some of these organizations can help you figure out what grant might be appropriate for you and your business, if any. There's also SBIR grants, which are federal grants. In the United States, small business innovation and research grants are organized by institutions looking to find small businesses that specialize in a specific topic. They have strict guidelines and rules, but offer quite a bit of money if you're an appropriate fit for them. Lastly, under grants are social or environmental grants. Like Ashoka, they offer special grants for those seeking to address one of their main concerns in business and in the environment. I just threw a lot at you.